All right, welcome in everybody to another Auburn Live show. I am Justin Hokanson from auburnlive.com, part of On3 Sports. Appreciate everybody joining us. If you're not a member, please go join our community at auburnlive.com, support what we are doing. It's blown up the last 5 months, I guess, since we launched. So we're having a lot of fun with it. So if you're a member, auburnlive.com, there's a 7-day free trial. So make sure that you're a part of that because it's exciting times. For Auburn athletics, which it always is with Auburn. All right, let me welcome in our guest, very special guest. I'm pumped to have her. You might recognize her last name, Jacqui Pearl. Jacqui, how are you?
I'm good, Justin. How are you?
I am good. I'm pumped that you're on. Like, so people are probably like, "What?" So I followed you on Twitter for a while. I've gone to games, for years. I've lived here for 10 years. Obviously, I'm an Auburn guy. I've gone to basketball games, and now I'm back covering the team, which I used to do. I actually covered when Bruce was hired.
Yeah.
I was in the industry, then got out of the industry and just went to games for fun, and then now I'm back doing it. But I've always paid attention to you, and I just think your perspective and how vocal you are is pretty cool and unique. And I thought, man, she needs to come on the show.
I have a lot of opinions.
Yes, which I love. So let's try to think where to start. I guess start there. Like I think family members, I guess, of coaches, maybe I don't see them all, but it seems like it's somewhat rare for them to be super vocal because their dad's the coach. If they say something, maybe their dad has to answer for it, or who knows what it is. But like,
Sure.
what have you always been just super outspoken, whether it's on social media or at games, or like, have you always just sort of been, hey, this is who I am and I'm going to be number one fan?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a social media perspective, honestly, I didn't join Twitter until Dad got out of coaching.
Right.
And I think for a lot of different reasons, but one of the main ones is that I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut when I see people say negative things, which, I think any kid with any parent that you love, that's always going to be a difficult thing, right? But you mitigate the fact that he is a public figure and that kind of comes with the territory. So I stayed completely away from it until he was done coaching. And I remember we lost to Michigan at Tennessee in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And we kind of knew that he was done at Tennessee at that point. And actually at a restaurant immediately after, I joined Twitter.
Oh, wow.
And I was really a spectator for a long, long time. And interestingly enough, that we're doing this today, it was actually the Calipari girls, his two daughters. I saw how they sort of interacted with fans on Twitter. And they were witty, they were smart about it. They kind of made it a little bit of a joke in a place where it could be confrontational. And I kind of dug that about how they approached it. And you asked about me just in general, I do have a tendency to, say what comes to mind or say anything that pops into my head sometimes. And so I just thought that was kind of a really cool way to address it and know that someone close to that person can see it, but also try to make a little bit light of it in what could be kind of a negative interaction.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is, and it's all just kind of, I think, worked out like how Auburn Twitter this season has taken off. And it's kind of, I think it's like perfect because I think, you're outspoken, but I think with the current kind of climate of Auburn Twitter and especially the basketball followers on Twitter, it's you're fine. Like, it's like they're witty and kind of it's just so it's I think it's sort of the Auburn fan base, including you, is sort of taking it to a fun level this year. As somebody who reports on it and following it, it's been funny to sort of watch and see and follow the commentary. It gives me a good idea of like the pulse of kind of how
Sure.
fans are thinking and stuff. And that's why I like following you. So, all right. So he gets out of coaching, Bruce gets out of coaching, you join Twitter. take me back to when he was hired at Auburn. I don't remember the exact details, but I mean, I think did he get y'all together and say, "Hey, I have this opportunity. What do y'all think?" I mean, y'all are a close family, and I know that. And what was that like when he's like, "Hey, I got a shot to get back in it at Auburn," which at the time, I mean, Auburn basketball has been so dismal. But take me back to that time. Like, what do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, and I say this with no disrespect, we didn't have any clue of the history of Auburn basketball. You know, when we were at Tennessee, they were in the West. It was when the West and the East were like still a thing, and you know, we played them once a year, but like didn't think anything of that opponent really, unless they beat us. And then I was like, oh, we just lost to Auburn. You know, and I think during that time, Dad wasn't coaching. He might have been one of the only ones who didn't think he would get back into it. I think the rest of us really thought, you know, sit out the show cause, go do your thing, selling, you know, bags of chips at grocery stores and convenience stores with HT Hackney, do what you need to do in the meantime, be on ESPN. But I think my siblings and I all had this idea that he was going to come back at some point. He wasn't done. And so I can remember he was still living in Knoxville at the time, getting a phone call saying, "Hey, this opportunity has come up and we're going to make this decision as a family and we're going to talk through it." And so we went over to his house, all of my siblings and I. Stephen and my sister still lived in Knoxville. Actually my sister was in Cincinnati, but she was in town. So like, you know, we all went over to the house and had like a real sit down conversation about it. Talked about, you know, pros, cons, the good, the bad, some of the ugly that was going to come with it. And he had our unconditional support to jump back in both feet. Because we've seen what he's been able to do at programs like Tennessee that we're heavily a football school in the SEC, and make it into a program that people really cared about and were invested in. And we thought he deserved the opportunity to do that someplace else. And so, you know, we had Jay Jacobs, we had David Benedict, who was here. They both came up, met them. And my first impression of those guys was just, these are really good-hearted people who I knew would take care of him and protect him in a way that maybe we hadn't seen before, and felt really comfortable with the fact that he was going to go work for these guys. And so I immediately, when the handshake happened and the hugs, we were drinking a beer, having some pizza, and I immediately ran to Belk to try to find the most orange and blue tie combinations that I could find, so that when he got off the plane or was doing his press conferences, that he had the correct tie attire on. And we were on a plane the next day.
That's so crazy. I mean, I was on the tarmac when he landed, and I was videoing, and I remember him getting off. I remember him going, you know, diverting and going a beeline straight for the fans and the students. I was right there. And it was amazing. I mean, his personality and his excitement was, I mean, I told somebody not to, you don't have to comment on this, but I can. You know, the previous coach at Auburn, Tony Barbie, the lack of connection with the Auburn community was like, and I told somebody, I'm like, Bruce Pearl literally just from walking to the plane, doing what he did, where he's jumping and he's telling everybody, that connection was more than anything that I had seen at Auburn, like in years. Like that one moment was better than anything I had seen. And so I just remember that so vividly. So like fast forward till now. So think about how far we've come. Could you ever imagined not the success, because you probably could, but the just the way the community has embraced Bruce, your family. I mean, he is, I'm just telling you, like, I deal with it on the fan side. We're a fan site, like love him. Like, he can do no wrong. I mean, it is the appreciation they have for him, the way he uplifts Auburn as a whole, is unbelievable. I mean, could you have imagined how how it's turned about. I guess, what are we, like 8 years later, 8 or 9 years later?
Yeah, I mean, I think you always hope when you come into new situations, new jobs, new facilities, new fan bases, that you hope that they're going to love him as much as we do, and as much as we feel he deserves to be loved, of course. And it's exceeded every expectation I think we could have had from the jump. Knoxville in itself is a pretty big place compared to Auburn, and so you were still a big fish, but in a bigger pond. And basketball at the time wasn't the monster that UT football was. So, there was a little bit of an ease in here. But the Auburn community being smaller, more intimate. And I've never seen a fan base go harder for their guys than Auburn fans do. And it's great. It's great. I don't know that any of us could have expected the unconditional support that he's received from everyone at Auburn, administration, coaching staff, and fan base. It's been great.
Yeah, it's incredible. Of course, we're recording this a couple of days out from, and it just sort of worked out this way. I mean, I reached out to you and I wanted to have you on the show before I knew that Auburn was about to play the biggest home game in the history of their arena. Really, it's the biggest home game in Auburn basketball history, period.
Sure.
And probably the biggest regular season game they've played in. I mean, it's just the Auburn, Kentucky, both teams ranked in the top 12. Whoever wins this game has got a great shot of winning the SEC regular season championship. And so it just kind of worked out that way that we're talking before this massive game that'll be on CBS and seen by millions of people. What do you remember about the Final Four run? I mean, because that still to this day for Auburn fans is like, so we actually went to the Final Four, like we did that, right? It's still surreal to me. I mean, there's times, just the thought of Auburn in the Final Four to this day is hard to fathom that happened. What do you remember about that run? And huge for Bruce. That's the crazy thing. It wasn't just big for Auburn. Bruce had never been to a Final Four. That was a huge milestone. He had done a lot in his career. That was a milestone for him and Auburn at the same time. Like, what do you remember about that run?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's one thing that everyone needs to remember. It wasn't just historic for Auburn. It was historic for us too. We had been to the Final Four as spectators, sitting there with a cocktail in your hand, watching a game, not really caring who won or lost, just wanting to see a good basketball game. And coaches go for work every year. So it was a historic run for our family as well. I think what I remember is, first winning the SEC tournament in Nashville and going back to the hotel on cloud nine, wearing SEC championship hats, thinking like we are going to get seated in the best, most favorable bracket and go to a close location and all of these things. We just won the SEC, and then we get a 5 seed and we're going to Salt Lake City, to play a team that maybe out of the entire field was going to be one of the toughest matchups for us. Looking down the road and you see Kansas, and Kansas as a 4 seed had a down year. Even farther along, you've got the 1 seed in North Carolina after that. And you're like, okay, well, I guess we just go back to work and we see how the heck we're all going to get to Salt Lake City, Utah, and just go out there and do our thing. And I remember being very anxious about that first game in particular. I said, just get the first one's the hardest to get in any tournament scenario, right? You got to get those jitters out and get used to the new arena that you're playing in. And and you're playing in Salt Lake City in the mountains, so altitude could be a factor for, who knows? There's a whole lot of variables that you're taking into that game. And, thank God I remember watching that corner 3 go up from New Mexico State, and it looked good from where I was sitting. And luckily it went about 2 feet past the rim. And we eked that one out. And on to Kansas, and then, of course, hand Kansas a big loss, on to North Carolina, a big loss. But losing Chuma was, I mean, it's, you want to be so happy. You're going to the Elite Eight for like the second time in Auburn history. We had been there once before, so, like, that's cool. We're getting to do that a second time, but you lose Chuma, who, was just such a vital part of the entire season. And you think, now we've got this monster ahead of us, Kentucky, who was arguably one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the entire tournament, the way that they were playing. And, it seemed insurmountable. And all odds stacked against us. And then, you remember, well, that feels like that's how it's always been, right? Like, being the underdog is great. I'd love if we popped up a 4-point dog on Saturday, because being the underdog is what makes a great story. So, going into that game, we had family around us. Our family travels pretty well for basketball tournaments, so we had folks from Boston who were there. We had folks from Florida. We had folks from the DC area, Texas, all of our family, our immediate family was there. And so, you look around and you're just like, you know what, if we don't get this one, we don't get it. Came a long way, historic season. We're without Chuma. It just, whatever happens. And then, you go into overtime with Kentucky to go to the Final Four. And it's just like, there are no words. There are just no words for, just what a cool experience it was as a fan, as a family member, but then you think about the guys on the team who spent their entire lives working for that moment, and what an awesome thing for them to get to experience too. So it was a wild ride.
It was. And you're right about that first game. That was, and Bruce talked about it. He's like, you just got to get past the first game. And that's basically what happened. They played well. And then, it was tight enough that in the end it got, I think it got tighter than they wanted it to. But once they got past that, I mean, it was like a weight off their shoulders. And they blitzed Kansas. And then to beat North Carolina the way they did. I mean, North Carolina and Kentucky both that year were fantastic. Those were fantastic North Carolina, Kentucky teams.
No doubt.
And for Auburn to do that without Chuma was even more incredible. I remember when they beat Kentucky. I'm watching that game. I went to Salt Lake City, which was such a fun trip. We watched the game. I think it was Thursday. We skied Friday.
Yep.
And then we went to the game Saturday. So like it was a freaking awesome trip. And I remember being in the arena Saturday when Auburn lightened up Kansas, and I'm looking around like at the Kansas fans, and they're like, what? I mean, they're just the confusion of like, what is happening? Like Auburn is running us out of the gym. What is going on? It was funny to watch. But I remember that Kentucky game. I'm at home watching, and my wife is sitting on the couch, and they won the game, and it was so surreal that I looked at her. And I'm like, I'm not gonna say it, but I'm like, they effing did it.
Yeah.
I'm like. They're going to the Final Four. Like I don't even like. It was like no reaction. It was hard to even have a reaction. It was so unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys felt the way. You know what was funny? One of my memories of you, which I know, how many times do people bring this up, of the SEC championship game against Tennessee when you're on TV? I know you've seen that
endlessly. Remember, I live in Knoxville. I graduated from the University of Tennessee, so I had friends in the stands. All of my friends from UT were watching that game, and I was getting text after text like, you are a psychopath, like sit down. I'm like, no, you're not going to make me sit. I will not.
Oh, I remember it vividly because I've watched the replays of that game so many times, and I think it was the Jared missing the layup, giving up the layup, dishing it to Bryce, hits the three, and they go to you, and you are losing it like every other Auburn fan, and it. I mean, it was just. I mean, that game was incredible, and I'm sure odd. Like, how has it been playing Tennessee? So you went to Tennessee, obviously Bruce coached there, and Auburn has owned them 6 times in a row, including some big games that kept Tennessee out of championships. Has it been awkward at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's been awkward. I mean, I think, as a individual, you want to have love for your alma mater, right? Like you want them to do well. I live in Knoxville. I work for a nonprofit, and in fundraising, I work closely with the University of Tennessee in my job. And so, it's hard for some people, I think they think it should be hard for me to decide who to cheer for in those scenarios. And for me, I'm like, you guys have to, like, my relationships with universities are who we work for at the time. I didn't grow up with a favorite team because my dad went to BC. I didn't grow up a BC fan. I grew up a Iowa Hawkeye. I grew up a Southern Indiana Screaming Eagle, a Milwaukee Panther. I didn't grow up with those feelings of affinity toward any university other than who we were working for at the time. And so when he gets a new job or had gotten a new job, you just kind of switch. You want to see them do well because it means the legacy that you built continues and it was sustained. But it not hard for me at all to cheer for Auburn over Tennessee in any scenario.
Yeah, and then they'll play again at the end of this year up in Knoxville, which will probably be an important game again.
It will be.
How special has it been watching Steven now and Bruce do this together? Because I think Steven's really embraced his role on the staff and is doing a great job. And they're different but similar. I've noticed. There's differences, but boy, on the court, like when the game's going on, the ref's going to hear two pearls probably chewing them out at times. But how has it been watching that sort of aspect of it, your brother being involved, and you're like, man, it's cool enough to root on your dad and be a part of that, but it's like even cooler to have your brother a part of it too. And that relationship they have to be able to coach together is pretty neat to watch.
Yeah. It's, we're a tight family, like you said earlier. So, it's great to have everybody, number one, in the same place. So, when I go visit, I get to see Steven and Brittany, his fiance. I get to see my youngest brother, Michael, who lives in Auburn with them. My sister lives in Atlanta, so not too far away. So anytime I go to Auburn, it's like a family reunion. It's family time. And one thing that I always laugh when I tell people, because it's hard to believe now, but Dad and Steven's player coach relationship was not good. I was like, Steven, are you sure you want to be a walk-on for him anymore? Because they butt heads and then they bring it home and it festers, So we, at least me, I'll speak for myself, for a while was like, I don't know that this is the best situation for the two of you. But if you can make it work, great. And, so going into a boss, employee relationship, really, I was like, what is this dynamic going to look like? Because now money's actually on the line and you've got to win to succeed. And it's been an incredible experience to watch the two of them. Not only has Steven grown as a man, but he's one heck of a coach too. And not that should be surprising to anybody, but the way he just took the reins and led in times that it's not easy to lead, to be a support for the players because he knows how they feel, especially to be coached by BP, but to watch their relationship get stronger and better and, them learning from each other. I think Dad will tell you very easily that he learns as much from his assistant coaches as they could learn from him. And you saw it during those two games that Dad had to sit out, just watching the bench, not necessarily Wes or Steven as the, interim head coach for that game, but just watching the entire bench and how they worked together and fed off of each other. And Burgo would talk to Chad, who would talk to Ira, who would talk to Wes, and then to Steven. And then when Wes was coaching, all of them collaboratively together. It was one of the cooler collaborative coaching experiences that I've ever seen. I mean, especially because all eyes are typically on the head coach, and those guys had an opportunity to step in, and we saw no drop off, which is one, a testament to the team itself and those kids, but to the coaches also, that it was just another day in the gym.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I love about when I have an opportunity to go to practice and watch, is how that staff works and how Bruce allows his assistants to be a part. If they, I mean, at any point they can jump in, and it doesn't matter. Bruce kind of runs it, but at any point, if they need to add something or whatever, I mean, it's do it. It's very. I think it's very. It's encouraging. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It's lost me, but he gives them great opportunities to do that and to be voice their opinions and stuff like that. And so it's fun to watch. It's also fun to watch him call Stephen Coach Pearl.
Well, and then for Steven to call him BP, it's kind of like a mind meld issue.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, now I call him BP. I'm like, wait, no, Dad. Just kidding.
Yeah, he'll be like Ira West, Chad, Coach Pearl.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, what do you make of this team? Like, here we are again with Auburn making a run. And I hate it for that team 2 years ago that got robbed of an opportunity in the NCAA tournament because of COVID with Samir and Isaac and Anthony and those guys. But I mean, this team, pretty complete team. Obviously, I think it's the best start of Bruce's career. 17-1. He was 16-2 at Tennessee once, 16-1, 16-2. But I mean, it might be the best start of his career. Could be number one if they can beat Kentucky, which he's done once before at Tennessee. But what do you make about this team? And here they are making this run again. How has it been sort of watching and coming to games and talking to your dad about what this team can maybe accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, it's every year you go in and, one as a now that I've grown up a little bit and I'm not in college with the guys anymore, we're not living in the same town anymore. For me, it's first learning who everybody is. And this year we had a ton of new guys come in. And so it's learning who they are, first of all, what numbers who and so on and so forth. But, this team, and I've said to many people early on, feels like his most complete team that I can remember him having. I mean, I think his Elite Eight team with Tennessee was right there. But I think at Tennessee, we didn't have a 5'10" point guard, who could just do crazy things. We didn't have a 7-foot center who was blocking 20% of the shots that get put in front of him. It's just, it's crazy. And, I think watching this team, I don't have any less anxiety because that is just who I am as a person. We were up by 25 yesterday and I'm still screaming at my television.
Yeah.
But you look at it and it seems like all the pieces are there, but not only are all the pieces there, but they have great chemistry. They trust one another. You get down by 14 at Ole Miss on the road, and a lot of teams, especially young teams, would have completely fallen apart. And it's a real testament to those guys to, settle in and grind back and come out of there with a win. And, I see a lot of that in every single game. I don't know that there's been a game where we've played our best the whole time. And that, for me, is an exciting thing to look for. It'd be great if it happened on Saturday, but
might need to.
It might need to. You're right. And I mean, I the more that I see and hear from Wendell, the more he has jumped into my top 5 of guys that has ever played for Dad. Quite honestly, when he tweeted the other day when the rankings came out and said, I'd rather be number 1 in April. I'm like, yes, yes, that's the exact right attitude to have. And, just the way how composed he is on the floor, he makes the right choices. I don't want to continue for people to compare him to Jared Harper, but that trust, I think, that you have to have in your point guard, I think we have that in both Zep and Wen. And then, I continue to be amazed by Jabari. Sometimes, he'll take a shot and I'm just like, God, he's good. Like he'll just take a turnaround jumper in traffic. And I'm like, God, you are good at
Yeah.
basketball.
You're a pro
Um,
now.
it's crazy,
Yeah.
and then of course Walker just doing what he does. And if he's not blocking shots, he's affecting shots. And it's an exciting team to watch. And we'll see. I mean, I hesitate to be too optimistic about it. I'm a superstitious person, so I don't like to put too much out there that can come back, but it's a really fun group of guys to watch. And even if we lose one or even two to a draft situation, there's a lot that's going to stick around, that's going to continue to be fun for us to watch for a while. So it's a good time to be an Auburn Tiger.
It's the best time to be an Auburn basketball fan. There's never been a better time. Yeah, what amazes me is the chemistry, the culture that he's built. And I'm around it more probably in the last handful of years than maybe his first couple of years here. But the culture he's built of unselfishness is pretty remarkable. I mean, to have guys that come in, and I wrote a story about it the other day. I mean, you can go back and look at the past few years. I mean, whether it's Deshaun Murray or Malik Dunbar, Samir Dowdy, Javon McCormick, the transfers that come in and just fit right in. I mean, there's been very few transfers that have come in and not fit their role and been successful and helped Auburn win basketball games. That's what kind of has been amazing to me is, hey, you're coming in, I'm playing 9 or 10 guys, and guys just buy in. And it helps that he has the wins to back it up. Hey, look, I promise you we'll win.
Right.
But that's always amazing to me is the unselfishness of the especially the last 4 or 5 years of Auburn teams when guys are playing minutes, but it doesn't matter. Was he like that? I mean, at Tennessee, I know he played a lot of guys, but what about him, I guess, makes it where he can create that culture where players are cool with that? How do you think he accomplishes that?
Yeah, I think it's team, not me, right? Like as someone used that several years ago, but it's team, not me, and next man up. And Dad says it all the time. My 5 might not beat your 5, but my 10 will beat your 10. And I think you want guys to come in who care about winning, period, no matter how we get there. And I think this team is a great example of that, especially you've got Jabari Smith, who is, arguably the best college basketball player in the country, obvious contender for #1 pick in the draft. And he's not playing 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
He can come out and sit on the bench, and we don't lose momentum when he's on the bench. And I think for him, it's nice that you don't have to go and just gas out, and we're not only relying on you. Like, will there be a time that Jabari needs to make a big shot in a big moment? 100%. Every great basketball player has that moment in their career, but you've got 5 guys on the floor who are capable of making those big shots. And so, I think Dad's mindset really is you're going to come here to win, and you're going to get yours, and someone else is going to get his, but we're going to get it together. And I think he's really throughout his career been very focused on that mindset. And I really think that's how he's managed to be so successful. It's great to get 5 stars.
Yeah.
It's great to get those highly ranked kids. You most of the time can't win without them. But to build a strong foundation around them that doesn't rely on that one guy or 1 or 2 guys to do everything it's how you win basketball games. And I just think he's done a really great job throughout his whole career of recruiting guys around his best players that are going to complement them, who are good with the role that they're playing, knowing, they run a lot of sets, and they talked about it on the broadcast last night. They run a lot of sets for a lot of different guys. And so, it's what makes them dangerous when they've got guys in all 4 or 5 play call spots that can make a bucket. And so he does a good job of distributing the basketball to the people that need to have it in their hands.
Yeah. All right, Auburn, Kentucky. So you're not going to make it, right?
No. no.
Oh, how much does that kill you?
It literally is eating. I said to somebody the other day, I'm going to quit my job for like 3 days, come to Auburn, and then come back on Monday and be like, just kidding. I changed my mind. Please take me back. Um, and it kills me. It really, really does. But it's the part that kind of stinks about being an adult with a job and a life that's 5 hours away from where all of this is taking place.
Yeah.
But I know how much the jungle and the Auburn faithful are going to have that place rocking. Y'all wouldn't be able to hear me anyway, and I would scream myself hoarse trying to be heard. And so I am dying on the inside to not be there. But it is an exciting weekend to be in Auburn. It's an exciting game to be played on the prime spot on CBS on a Saturday when there will be playoff football happening later on in the day. It's the game of the week, and it'll be exciting to see what happens.
Yeah, if it's a close game, which I would anticipate it probably will be, the audience probably in the second half before people are tuning into to the Bengals and the Titans is going to be big. It's going to be, and that's great for all. Everybody knows Kentucky. That's just great for Auburn. That's a huge win for Auburn in and of itself.
Yep.
Hey, all right. So I want to ask you this before we get out of here, and
Yeah.
you can be as politically correct as you want to be.
Okay.
Because I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
All right.
And we talked about it a little bit before we started recording. So you've got, Bruce's success at Auburn's been awesome. And you have, recently you have a job like Maryland that comes open. Great tradition in basketball. Louisville there's talks that they may get rid of their coach. Obviously, great tradition in basketball. And
Sure.
whether it's those two or somebody else that comes along that has a, quote unquote, better tradition of basketball or history of basketball than what Auburn's done over, let's say, 50 years, Auburn fans immediately are like, oh no, they think in football terms. Well, that's a better job. He's going to go. He's just going to go take the money. And what do you think about where Bruce stands with Auburn? Like, I have my own thoughts. I think he appreciates what Auburn has done for him. I think that he's established, right? Like, instead of starting over. But what do you think if somebody were to come along and say, Bruce, we want you? You think he's entrenched enough at Auburn to go? You think this is where he wants to retire?
I mean, I'll say this. I think I look at it, and I hope some fans are able to look at it as a positive thing, that you've got major basketball programs with major traditions, long histories of winning, coming after your coach. But remember, he's your coach. And he is not focused on anything else except getting his team to be in the best position they can to get a win whenever that moment comes. He loves Auburn. We all love Auburn. My brother and his fiance own a home in Auburn. She left Nashville to be there with him. My car has basically memorized the drive down 75, 285, 85 into Auburn off Bent Creek Drive. So it's Auburn is a place that we all love. It is a place that has stamped itself on all of our hearts. And we'll continue. We have a lake house at Lake Martin. It's a place that our family is going to come for as long as there are any pearls walking this earth. And so, I can say that he is a diehard Auburn guy. There is nobody who speaks higher of Auburn than him, and he's happy where he is. It's great that we're winning, and it's a compliment that people want your coach. And so take it as that and enjoy the wins, because it's an exciting season.
Yeah.
But he loves Auburn, and I don't think has any intention of going anywhere. So
I've joked with people that I'm like, we'll really know where how far Auburn basketball's come when they have a down year.
Yeah.
Like and I almost don't even count last year because there was COVID, and I think nobody kind of really looks a lot into that. Not to mention Auburn was incredibly young, but I'm like, let's see when they have a down year, what the reaction is to, because that's when you see the passion. Is there apathy versus passion and all that? But Bruce just won't have a down year. Like he said he went regular season championship, Final Four, number 2 seed in the tournament, COVID year, which okay, let's just kind of that's a mess anyway. And then now here we are, and he's knocking on number 1. I mean, it's now been, if you take away the COVID year, 4 straight years of not just good basketball, great basketball.
Right.
It's been incredible. So I keep waiting for just that 20-10 or something, and see how fans react. My guess is he could go 18-16, and fans would be like, no, that's okay. Look, totally
10,
fine. It's
10
totally
years
fine.
ago, we were below 500.
Yeah.
No,
No,
I
it's
mean,
fine.
you're right. It's in the challenging times where you see what true fandom looks like. And, we just hope that he, listen, do we want to have a down year? No. Is it
Yeah.
possible that it will ever happen? 100%. So I remember in the early days, when we would win a couple games and people would get so excited, then we'd lose a couple games and people would go nuts. And I'm like, guys,
Yeah.
relax, take deep breaths in and out. No, down years will happen. And we always joke in our family that when you're winning, they're begging you to stay. And when you're losing, they're packing your bags, trying to get you out of town. So we hope that y'all love us and him and Steven enough to not pack bags for us to show us out of town anytime soon.
Look, I'm telling you, I mean, there's not a coach on that campus. I mean, if anybody, I'm just telling you from the reaction we see from people, if there's anybody that comes in between Bruce and what he wants, like it's like Bruce wants a brand new marble Coliseum, and people will be like, get it to him, or like, okay, you need to go. Let's find somebody who's going to give that to Bruce. It's just hilarious. It's going to be, how weird is it going to be? You're going to show up and his name's going to be on the court, or he's going to have a statue out there. I mean,
you know what? All he's ever wanted is a street named after him on a campus that he's worked. You don't need the court. You don't need the statue. He wants a Bruce Pearl Boulevard somewhere on Auburn campus.
that should have already happened. Now that's easy. That should have already happened. We got to make that happen.
He's a simple man. That's all he wants. And maybe a sandwich named after him at Mama Goldberg's. He'd take that too.
Seriously, that stuff, that's way past. Love Mama G's. Well, man, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Great conversation. I really appreciate it. Make sure you're following Jacqui on Twitter, because it's awesome.
It's a ride.
Not taking any crap from anybody. This last week was interesting with the ranking, and boy, whew, I said I felt bad for the guy who ranked Auburn 9th. I was like, oh, God bless you, man, because you're gonna have a rough day.
I know. I say it, and I say it with love. Auburn Twitter fans are unapologetically petty, and I am here for all of it. Here for all of it. Keep it up.
They are. All right. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate everybody listening. AuburnLive.com. If you're not a subscriber, please go do that. Follow Jacqui on Twitter. Yeah, be a part of the site, be a part of Auburn basketball. Auburn, Kentucky, noon, CBS, big game on Saturday. So that's going to be crazy. All right, Jacqui, we'll see you.
All right, Justin, thanks. War Eagle.
All right, War Eagle.